And now let's proceed to the discussion, to the first session, Keynote Roundtable discussion that will be moderated by Nino Dolidze, Executive Director, the International Society for Fair Elections and Democracy, ISFED. Nino, thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much. Dear colleagues and distinguished guests, it's of course a great pleasure for me to moderate this very important session on women's political participation. And I think it is really great timing because we have few months left before the municipal elections in Georgia. So I would like to thank you to the organizers, and of course I would like to thank the European Union, Swedish Embassy, and all international organizations supporting women's political participation in Georgia. I am honored to moderate the session where three outstanding women politicians will talk about their experience and share their own histories, how they developed their political career, what barriers they had to overcome as women politicians. These are Kerstin Lundgren from Sweden, Nino Zilosani and Tina Boguchava from Georgia. So I hope we will have very interesting discussion today. I hope their inspirational stories will motivate other women to step in politics in order to ensure that voices of women are heard in politics and women's rights are defended in Georgia, to be women politicians, especially in Georgia. Political participation in particular country, and it's also social and political life. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
No, now it's better. Yes, now it's good.
Okay. Thank you. So today, you know that women represent average 25% in national parliaments throughout the world. But of course, it varies from country to country. And Sweden is a very good example of women's political participation. It's 7th place in the world with 47% of women in national parliament. While unfortunately, Georgia is on the 114th place in the world ranking with 20% of women political participation. But still, we are really glad that we have moved forward, because compared to previous years and previous decade, we have made several steps forward to women's political participation. And according to the international standards, women in parliament or in decision making should compromise at least 30% in order to make changes. And from the Council of Europe recommendation, it's even more, 40%. So when we talk about women, of course, we do not talk about numbers only. Latest surveys have shown that women in politics lead to the more prosperous and welfare state. Women bring different dimensions in economic life, peace and security. That's why we also need women in politics. As mentioned earlier, Georgia, of course, made steps forward in terms of gender equality during the last 2 decades. However, there is still much to do in order to ensure essential equality between men and women in the country. Women's rights defenders, women's movement, and special task forces have fought a lot to achieve gender equality in different dimensions, like gender-based violence, women's economic empowerment, and of course, women's political participation. And here I should, of course, underline the gender quota, adoption of gender quota last year, which is the result of the restless effort and advocacy by women's rights defenders in Georgia. So gender quota is really possibility for women to enter the politics finally, and it's even more important for municipal elections, which is coming in few months. And the underrepresentation of women in municipal elections is even more visible in Georgia. So here, as I mentioned earlier, it's especially important in Georgia to share experiences of women politicians, role models who already overcame all these barriers that women have, and to share their experiences to those women who want to join politics, but somehow they are hesitating or they are afraid to join politics. That's why I think today sharing experiences of three women from Sweden and Georgia will be very important for those women who want to join politics. With this, I will turn the floor to my distinguished panelists to tell us more about their personal stories. Let me start with our guest speaker from Sweden, Kerstin Lundgren, third Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Sweden, who has experience in working in politics more than 20 years. So, dear Kirsten, could you please tell us more why you decided to join the politics? What are the challenges women politicians face in political life? And what kind of resources and support women politicians need from their political parties to be able to participate in politics? And I just want to make a reminder that we have 7-8 minutes for the initial speech, and then we go for question and answers. Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving me the chance to take part in this webinar, and I hope we will be discussing later on. So please stop me when time is running too fast. Actually, I think going out from my own experience from the Swedish side, the question is of course always where to start, because if we look at the political life in Sweden, when I started, there were not so many women. We didn't have any leader of the political party at the time. Nowadays, we have my party have their third political leader, female leader. So there have been a change over the years I've been in politics. And the picture of power have by that also changed during my lifetime, because the picture of power was obviously the strong man. And in many cultural situations, you are looking for your daddy or your strong man who can fix everything. And that has been going in several countries I've been visited, also visited Georgia for a time. I mean, that is the picture of power that we have to fight against, showing that the role model is not a man. The role model is human beings, equal, with equal rights and the rights of their voices to be heard and be inclusive in this society. And I think you have different way of doing things in different political systems and cultures. Coming from Sweden, we have, I think, a very important part is the youth league in the political parties, because the youth league is, when you're going into that, you are starting and you are fighting and you are training yourself to take the fights. And I think that is some kind of academia for training yourself and also challenge yourself in how to do things. And I did it. I moved around a little bit before I decided to go in for my party. And I think that was very interesting and an important part. But also the question, of course, coming into political life and being elected, it's something specific, being elected. And being a woman, being a young woman, as I was when I was elected at first, it was a double challenge, because you are not young and you shouldn't be a woman if you want to have stronger seats. So for me, it has always been a question of, well, let's talk about that. I'm not accepting that. So it has, in a way, challenged me to show up, and also later on showing for my two girls back home that this is possible. The world is open. You have the possibilities. Show up and make your voice heard. and don't let anyone else tell you what's the limits. The sky is the limit, more or less. So I think that is important to see. And I have also been working for showing other women, and we have not only youth league, we have also women's leagues in the parties. Not every party in Sweden, but several, and my party has it. And I think that has also been a room, creating the room for women politicians to come together and have this kind of well, sometimes not only friendly, but at least some kind of development discussion, showing up for sisters when it's election time, setting the lists before starting the campaign. You have to have someone backing you up, pushing you up, and telling you, well, let's go for it. And I think that is also has been very important for the whole of women's participation and representation in political life in Sweden. So I think that has also been important. I mean, we have to also make sure that putting on our own glasses, as I usually say, because we as women can sometimes be the force fighting other women, because the quota system is telling you, and that I felt myself, well, why should I do this just because I'm a woman? No. It's because I have a vision, I have a drive, I want to do something, I want to develop something and create some changes. And it's not because of what kind of sex I have, it's because of me. So it's, I think it is showing that we have plurality. It's not just one quota system that can make it. You must make sure that you have plurality and acceptance for different differences in the society, and try to make it inclusive, because then it's the different voices. You want to be heard, want to get to the polling stations, want to stand in elections, because that is also important. For many women, okay, at first, when we had the 100 years ago, the equal suffrage, well, not so many women went to the polling stations because they didn't think they had anything to do there. It was not the habit. And then standing in elections at first was also, of course, the front runners. It's amazing what they have achieved. So you need to have front runners, and you have to have people backing them up. And then, of course, for me, becoming a mother, that was a big change. Because when becoming a mother, you were also, in a way, changed the way people saw me was suddenly not just me, it was also the motherhood and the expectations, how to be a mother. And that could be hard from other women, as well as from the society as such. So for me, it was also the question of make sure, well, I'm a mother, but I'm still the same. And also showing up when bringing my kid into the, when I became the president in a local council, showing up with my new born baby, bringing her in, and making this an inclusive society should also make sure that differences in family lives could be sorted out, and trying to make room for others to come after me is also an important issue, of course, for us as for all the others. So I think that as you have some specific times in your life when you are challenged, suddenly you are not seen as before. And you take some time before you really understand what happened. Suddenly people are not talking politics or policies with me. They are just talking about my children. How come? Oh, suddenly I realize they look upon me with other glasses. And I think that is also something we must talk about and make sure that you are not stepping back, but stepping forward. And in local societies, I think small societies, this is something that needs to be supported. Otherwise, people could feel that, oh, I need to do as my mother did. Yeah. And that brings you several years back in development. And I think you need to put on your glasses and talk about that locally as well as globally to make sure that women are feeling, I'm okay, I can do it, as well as the others. So I think I have made my time now. Thank you.
Thank you, Przesny, for these wonderful remarks, what you mentioned.
Nina, sorry to interrupt, but I was told that there is some problem with interpretation for Georgian listeners. So I'll just make a short announcement in Georgian. Targmistvis browseridan არ უნდა შეხვიდეთ, Zoom-ი უნდა გქონდეთ ჩამოტვირთული. და იმ შემთხვევაში ძალიან მარტივად შევხვალთ. მადლობთ. Sorry, Nina.
Okay, I hope Georgian listeners can listen now to us. Thank you again, Kerstin, for these wonderful remarks. You correctly mentioned that when we talk about women in politics, immediately maternity comes around and double burden what women have. And it's especially in Georgia because we have very masculine society here in Georgia. And when we talk about municipal elections, it's even deeper in the regions than in the capital. So it is really a problem. And also here in Georgia, political parties sometimes do not make this room, what you mentioned, for women in order to enter the politics, because political parties are the tool and mechanism for women to enter the politics. If they do not nominate women candidates, then there is no chance and opportunity for women to join the politics. And you correctly mentioned, yes, for us, sky is the limit. We should do everything in order to achieve our goals. With this, I want to move to Georgian speakers now. I would like to ask Ms. Nino Tsilosani, who is a member of the Georgian Parliament, and she is also head of the Gender Equality Council of the Parliament of Georgia. And especially, I would like to underline here that Nino has won majoritarian race in 2016 elections. And in Georgia, majoritarian elections are even more difficult for women because it's like we have narrative that only women can win in majoritarian system and women cannot do that. But Nino, you destroyed this type of narrative and you were elected as a majoritarian. So if you could share your experience, why you decided to join the politics, how much it was difficult to run as a majoritarian woman, and what it is for you to be a women politician, and what type of support it is needed for political party or elsewhere to be on the equal page with men and women in parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina, introducing me in such a nice way. And really, I agree with you that in Georgia, we have one additional stereotype that women are not majoritarian member of parliament and that just men or authorities, local authorities can win the elections. But we women destroy these stereotypes as after nomination, we win the elections, and no other problems than the ordinary election and campaigning process is raised up during this period. It is never too much speak about the women's empowerment, and we do agree that the aim is not reached yet. Especially 2021 will be one of important milestones in women political participations. Local elections are on its way, and we have to empower women. 100 years ago, our ancestors took a progressive step for that time and gave women right to vote in elections. 100 years since then, we have also dared to introduce gender quotas to eliminate inequality that prevents women participation in politics. If we imagine for a moment where our country would be now if not Russian occupation and stalled development, paused progress, we can clearly imagine a country that inherits the first democratic elections held a century ago and women who were actively represented in politics. We can proudly say that nothing has been done to empower women in the last decades more than we did it in the last 4 or 5 years. Identifying and eliminating violence against women, introducing new definitions in relevant laws, establishing new rules to protect women's rights, mechanisms of financial incentives introduced to increase women's political participation, and finally, gender quotas. Throughout this decade, the symbolic roles of girls and women as housewives, mothers, and wives has gradually shifted to their public and active roles. Women feel and fight for their rights, and the result is visible. According to the rankings which analyze the proportion of women who serve as heads of state of government or in cabinets or in local government bodies, highly developed countries such as Norway, Sweden, and others are on top of the women participation. And on the other hand, economically less developed countries are on bottom. Hence, there is a clear correlation between development and women's participation in politics. Various studies show that increasing women's labor force participation produces large gains in economic welfare also. Nevertheless, questions still remain why we need to empower women and artificially provide more women in politics and what mechanisms are needed to provide it. When we talk about crucial needs of women's political participation, we can easily imagine a room full of men and a lot of obstacles and challenges women face to enter this room. In this case, the gender quota is the only effective mechanism to encourage women politicians to be a part of Georgian politics. The greatest increase in women's parliamentary representation have occurred in those countries where quotas, whether legislated or voluntary, are in use. Nowadays, under the legislative changes we did together with the civil sector, together with each of you represented here, parties are obliged to take responsibilities on the gender aspect while submitting their party lists to the election commission. The amendments introduced 25% gender quotas. This is not enough, but it is the good place to start. Regardless, it will provide to increase the total number of women MPs to 50 in 2028, which would be 1/3 of the total number of MPs. In 2021, we will face women's active participation in the local elections. As by these amendments we have done, every second of the list should be a different gender. And this will be real burst in active women, capable to represent their community, express their opinions and needs of their constituency. We strive to achieve critical mass of females in parliament, as women are simply able to achieve solidarity of purpose to represent women's interests when they achieve certain levels of representation. I didn't succeed in politics, and many of my colleagues also did it. Yet, are we creating enough statistics for the thousands of talented and motivated women who deserve more achievements? By my side, there are probably a dozen of women who deserve success, unless the glass ceiling, obstacles and stereotypes that holds them all and keeps far from moving forward. In politics, where the rules are set by men, which are so harsh and aggressive that only the laws of the jungle can serve us here, Will women be able to succeed without our support? Women need support and defined rules to act. Women need patience and emotional intelligence to survive. Throughout these 5 years in political experience of mine, I have felt many times that my voice is weak and silent in the turmoil where men predominate. I have regretted so many times that in a room full of people, I could only find few of us. I'm very glad when new women enter the political space. And once again, I'm convinced that the struggle always makes sense, that each of us, by our very existence in politics, are creating a base where more and more women can come and establish themselves. So from this and not only this platform, I appeal to all women. You are welcome. We will strengthen each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Nino, for sharing your experience. And of course, support from the political party is very much important in this battle, because as I mentioned, independently, if we do not have support from the party and if party doesn't nominate women politicians, unfortunately, it becomes even more difficult for women who wants to join the politics to establish herself. And also, I would like to underline here that it's even more difficult for those women who are in the parties which are, for example, in opposition or do not have much support. And with this, I want to move to our last but not least speaker, Ms. Tina Tinpokuchava, who represents also Parliament of Georgia. She's third time elected as a member of the Parliament of Georgia. She's representing opposition political party, and she has struggled herself a lot to establish herself as a women politician, but she's struggling so much, not only for women, but for everything. And Tina, if you could share your experience, how much it is difficult to be women politician in Georgia, plus also representing opposition political party, and what would you say to other women who want to join the politics, but do not have party support, do not have financial support, but they still want to join politics? Thank you. Tina, you are muted, unfortunately.
Here we go. Thank you very much, Nini, for this introduction. Thank you very much to the Swedish Embassy for organizing this event. Today is sort of a pivotal day for the UNM, which is the party I represent, United National Movement, which is the largest opposition party, as after an almost 7-month parliamentary boycott due to deeply flawed elections in 2020 of October that were assessed as on the threshold of legitimacy, we are breaking the boycott and entering parliament to take up our seats and to prepare the legislative framework for any future elections, which we hope will be free and fair, and where we hope our international partners will be more duly represented once we have all globally been able to come out of the pandemic that we're struggling with. So thank you very much. It's sort of the timing of it was a little bit uneasy, but I'm very glad to be on this panel. As the topic that we're supposed to speak about indicated was the needs that women have in politics in order to participate in politics on equal terms. And I would like to speak on the subject in sort of 4 different prisms: on a personal prism, party level, policy and politics level, and the societal level. On a personal level, I think what's most needed in order to participate in politics is courage and a desire to persevere, because any of us that will say that there will not be obstacles, that there will not be impediments, that will not be derogatory statements, that there will not be threats, that there will not be stereotypes, that there perhaps won't be violence, we will be lying, certainly in the Georgian context. there will be all of that, and perhaps even other obstacles. So I think the courage to continue, the courage to persevere is the most important need on a personal level that women must fulfill in order to participate in politics and be successful in politics. I remember when I was elected to parliament for my first term in 2012, one of the first plenary sessions that I went to, one of the male colleagues from the majority, who was subsequently again put on the list and elected for a second time, who at the time occupied a parliamentary post, which I believe he should have been deprived of, made extremely derogatory comments with sexual connotations on the plenary floor, but no other person actually took action to express solidarity and to have him at least forego the parliamentary position that he had within parliament. He remained on the list, he remained part of the men's club, he remained to be an accepted individual for his party. And so, I think that was one of the first experiences that I had as a woman where I realized that personal courage would be the most important propelling force for my career. After that incident, perhaps someone would have thought that I should have become less visible and less vocal, and perhaps I wouldn't fall into the eyes of the opponents so much, and then less derogatory statements would be made. But no, I decided that I would be more vocal and more visible. And I think that has served me well. The second level that I would like to speak about is the party level. And I think there it is very important to be self-critical as well. When I speak about impediments and obstacles that women encounter in parties, I, to a certain extent, speak about my own party as well, where I have tried to do a lot of work to overcome those obstacles, to break down those stereotypes, to bust those myths that are pervasive in society and therefore, unfortunately, pervasive in every party in Georgia. There are myths such as the one that women cannot be as successful as men when running as candidates, that they're not, that they cannot put up a fight in a contested and a tough election as well as men do, that they're not as reliable as men are. But we have seen over my 8.5 years of being in politics that all these are myths. Myths a lot of times created and perpetuated by men precisely for the reason of keeping us out. And I think women have to be honest about the difficulties they're facing within their own parties in order that we can build bridges across parties and reach out to each other across parties and link arms across parties on issues that actually matter and on obstacles that we know full well we experience everywhere, including in our own parties. One of the ways to break down these barriers within parties, I believe, is forming a women's organization. I am extremely proud to have formed a women's organization in 2013 in UNM. It is the largest political women's organization in the country. We have over 30 municipal organizations. And I believe that has provided for a certain platform for advocate things, to sensitize the men, to raise our voices, to make ourselves visible. And so I would encourage every political party, despite the skepticism that inevitably they will face, as I did, to form women's organizations within their parties that can serve them as a platform for advocating for their rights. Another need, I believe, on a party level is the creation, is the establishment of a rules-based promotion system. All too often, party decisions, and in particular, the most important decisions which pertain to the formation of party lists, which is the most prominent advancement for a party politician, be it at the national level or at the local level, in particular in the lead up to the local government elections in 2021 and fall of 2021, I believe this is pertinent, the establishment of clear rules, of criteria, of a transparent process whereby promotion is made and advancement is made within parties, and whereby selection is made of candidates, I believe is the best way to address the needs of women to be represented on equal terms. Because where there is a meritocracy, we thrive. Where our abilities are evaluated, we thrive. And therefore, that is another sort of recommendation I would have for all my colleagues and including within my own party. The third level that I want to speak about was the policy and the national level. At the policy and national level, of course, the establishment of quotas is extremely important. At UNM, for example, we have an internal party quota, but a national quota is, I find, often a more effective one because it is obligatory, it is in the law, you cannot sidestep it as the inclinations may be with internal party quotas. So I commend very much the work that civil society has done in bringing about the quota that has ensured that every fourth candidate is a woman on national lists, and that every other candidate is a woman on the local government lists. And then the second need I would stress is the need for a violent-free electoral environment, because unfortunately, this may not be the case necessarily in Sweden. However, in Georgia, violence is an integral part of political life, be it violence on social media or physical violence. And maternity was mentioned by Kirsten, and I was pregnant for part of the first term of my parliamentary work. And I assure you that indeed provided an impediment for me to attend rallies, to even participate in parliamentary work at times, because even plenary sessions got violent at certain points. And that, of course, acts as an obstacle to women. Unfortunately, blackmail is an integral part of political life. And of course, that deters women from politics. So in general, strengthening the country's democratic credentials serves to ensure a more equal representation of women in politics, just like strengthening a meritocracy within parties does. Because again, we thrive in an environment where we can express our abilities, but that environment is something that must be enabled by all actors, including women, but also men. And then last, because I guess we're limited in time, is societal, obviously. When I was first elected here, I will share a little bit of personal stories, since this was sort of the format in which our appearances were meant. I was 29 years old when I was elected in 2012 for my first term. And, you know, I can name a dozen other men who've been elected at that age or even younger to the Parliament of Georgia, but nobody has ever questioned their age. Immediately, rumors abound about my young age, about my appearance, whereas a male counterpart would never be measured up because of their appearance or because of their age. It was not my education that people were asking about. It was not my experience that people were asking about. It was my age and my appearance that most people were speaking about. But I thought to myself at that time, okay, these are societal challenges that I'm experiencing within Georgia, but our Western friends will certainly be there to support me. And I remember one of the first meetings that I had with a Western diplomat, a woman of one of Georgia's very dear and important partner countries. And she looked at me and she said, Tina, you know, you won't always look so cute and people will start to take you seriously. This was one of my first interactions in my capacity as an MP, as a member of parliament. I'd obviously had very good relationships with our Western partners and diplomats accredited in Georgia in my previous capacities, including at an international organization or representing Georgia as the chargé in Geneva to international organizations. But at that time, I thought to myself, politics really must be special, because never before has my appearance been such a focus. Not when I left Georgia at the age of 15, when we had no electricity and lived in really a decrepit state where every state institution was dysfunctional, including the educational system, ripe with corruption. And so I fled with the help of a family, of an American family, to the United States, and barely speaking English, graduated as #1 of my class. My appearance was not mentioned. When I went to a college where, my parents couldn't have paid 1% of the tuition because we lived in a decrepit state, nobody asked about my appearance. Not when I negotiated with Russia, nobody asked about my appearance. But in politics, that became the focus. So just as Kirsten said, politics is something special. And yes, politics for women really is something special. We encounter so many obstacles in other spheres of life, but I believe that the obstacles women encounter in politics are twofold, threefold, tenfold that perhaps we would have encountered in education or other professions, although they also do exist there. So I will I will stop there, because I know we have a time limit. Again, thank you very much to Nino. Thank you very much to the Swedish Embassy, the women's movement, and the task force, some of members of which may be here with us. Nino said that it is through their restless efforts that a lot of these stereotypes have been broken and a lot of the public awareness has happened in Georgia. And I cannot agree with her more, that really without them, it would have been very difficult to fight this fight that we must continue fighting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina, for this very inspirational speech you had. And also I would like to congratulate you entering the parliament. I know that it's very important you being in the parliament. You really touched upon very important issues, which will be discussed later during another panels about political parties and some other measures what should be taken in order to ensure women's political participation. I would just like to underline two issues you mentioned. Which one of them is like gender-based violence in politics, which is increasing issue also in Georgia, and also discrimination based on age, based on appearance, what women have to also overcome whenever they want to enter the parliament. And here I would like to say that gender-based violence do not have any party affiliation, and all women across parties should stand together in order to fight gender-based discrimination in politics. So this is really important topic. There we see that all women will stand, and I hope this sisterhood in Georgia increases. We do not have time in order to ensure question and answer panel. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So Eka, please advise how we should continue here. Do we have time for questions, or we should move to another panel? Eka, you are muted.
Technically, we do not have a time for questions, but I myself was so inspired with the speeches that, I would think that maybe, if Eric and Swedish partners are not against, maybe we can have additional 5 minutes for, to answer the questions, or, raise some.
As I am receiving a message that others panelists also have to leave, unfortunately.
Okay.
So we have to summarize this panel. Thank you very much to all of the panelists of this session. It was really inspirational to listen your personal stories. It's really motivational for others who want to join the politics. In Georgia, especially in this masculine society, it's very difficult to step in politics, considering all the barriers what was mentioned during speeches of our colleagues. But I think that it is so important to have more women in politics, and it is so important to have heard voices of women in politics. I really encourage all the women who wants to join politics to step forward and enter the politics, especially now when we have chances for local self-government elections. And I just want to end with the saying that some say culture does not make people, people make culture. So if it's true that women in politics is not Georgian culture, we should do everything to make it Georgian culture. Thank you very much again for giving me opportunity to moderate this important session, and I will stay for the entire conference and success. I wish success and good luck to the following sessions. Thank you again.